Tuesday Seventh-day Adventists, a revival of original Adventism and ancient Christianity, presents Escape for Thy Life, a program explaining prophecy, current affairs, theological issues, rights and freedoms, health issues, natural disasters, comparative religion, pioneer history, creation versus evolution, escape for thy life. Good day, this is Brother Medina for Tuesday Seventh-day Adventist, and please let us start with a word of prayer. Loving Father, please be with us as we explain ourselves. Help us to speak the truth and nothing but the truth for your glory's sake. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. Well, today's topic is murder by government. Murder by government. And the name of the topic is to highlight certain changes that has taken place in the United States of America, which will affect us all. In fact, my dear people, the US government has now legalized murder by the President of the United States. Mr. Obama has now become the first President of the United States of America that have ordered murder without due process. Yes, my dear people, the very first president. The country is deteriorating in many ways. The United States of America is deteriorating in many ways. The rights and freedoms of citizens are being taken away by conspirational congressmen that are seeking to bring the United States of America into a new world order. All this is preparing the world to murder God's people who refuse to receive the mark of the beast. And all this, my dear people, is prophesied to happen. If we look at Revelation and we check chapter 13 and we read verse 11, here is the United States of America being prophesied of. I quote, it says this, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." Yes, my dear people, this is the United States of America being spoken of here. It is not time to go into all the discussions of it, but we are told that America will speak like a lamb, and then afterwards it will speak like a dragon. So it would be lamb-like in its form of government, and then it will become dragon-like, according to the devil, in its form of government. We are told that Christians will be murdered for their belief in the United States of America, and this will spread all over the world. If we read Revelation chapter 13 again, and we go to verse 12, hear what we are told. It says this, "And he," that is America, "exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and he caused the earth," notice what he calls the earth, "and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast whose deadly wound was healed." So America will lead the whole world to cause this to happen. And this is the reason why what takes place in America will affect the whole world. So if the American system of Jeffersonian republicanism changes from that and becomes communism, a horrible form of government which takes away your rights and freedoms, then we know this will affect the whole world. Yes, my dear people. Furthermore, if we go to chapter 13 of Revelation again, and we go to verse 15, here is what we are told. "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and caused as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." Yes, my dear people. And so we are actually told that the United States of America will descend into a type of government that can kill people at random. You see, my dear people, what affects America affects the world. And if that government now is now murdering people, assassinating people without due process, this is how horrible it is. So we are going to show you a clip here, and you're going to pay careful attention to what is being said. You would see Al-Waki, an American citizen, was murdered by Obama through a drone strike. And not only that, he was murdered because of his beliefs, because we are told he was a propagandist of Al-Qaeda, which means to say that he spread their teachings. Also, his son, 16 years old, was also murdered by Mr. Obama. And why? Because he's simply his son. And I can say that it may be because they were fearful that he would practice revenge. But here America can kill people abroad and within its own country with the simple United States president signing a death warrant for the person without due process, without the courts. This is what you're going to see in this very clip.
But when the president can kill whoever he wants, then he's not a president anymore, he's a king.
To start assassinating American citizens without charges, we should think very seriously about this.
There aren't even any charges filed against him other than what the president's people have publicly said about him. Can we just say that because of what we think he said to somebody in a foreign country, he's lost his right to life and American agents can just kill him?
If the American people accept this blindly and casually, that we now have an accepted practice of the president assassinating people who he thinks are bad guys, I think it's sad.
I strongly object to the president institutionalizing a policy that explicitly says that he has the authority to target American citizens because he believes they're bad people. You don't protect bad people because they deserve it. You protect bad people and go through the process because you think a lot about innocent American people never being treated in this manner. This is something that is this is major in many ways about following the rule of law.
I can remember here at Fox arguing in the hypothetical whether or not the president could order an American killed, and everybody was recoiled at even the thought of it. Now it doesn't even make the front pages. What about the Constitution? What about life, liberty, and property? What about the very obligations imposed on the government in the document that created the government itself?
Well, that's the whole point of the document in the Bill of Rights. Our ancestors tried to protect us against this omnipotent type of power. That was the whole idea. They said, look, the greatest threat to our freedom, the freedom of the American people, is this federal government that we're calling into existence. And to protect the people from this government, we're going to have the Bill of Rights and constitutional limitations.
The Nobel Peace Prize winner has just announced and authorized that he has told the CIA that it can assassinate American citizens in direct violation of the Constitution's Due Process Clause, in violation of federal law, and in violation of treaties to which the U.S. is a party. The Due Process Clause to the Constitution states that no person, whether they're overseas or in the U.S., may be deprived of life, liberty, or property by the government without due process of law, which means a jury trial.
He was never tried or charged for any crimes. Nobody knows if he ever killed anybody.
There's no trial here. There's no judicial determination. It's some bureaucrat or team of bureaucrats that says, we have determined that that guy is guilty of terrorism, therefore we have a right to kill him.
So the president says, look, these people are on the list. Is that what he does?
What the CIA does, and it doesn't happen very often, what the CIA does is they go into literally to the president, and they have a list of all of the things that this person has been charged with, and they have all of the, not charged with, not indicted.
And he signs a death warrant.
He signs a death warrant.
Yes, our president has a hit list of American citizens like you targeted for assassination. And there are indications that the list of Americans targeted for assassination is growing.
Well, we all know that their definition of terrorism in every government, every dictatorial regime, inevitably starts going to the area of people who criticize what the government's doing, arguing against it, arguing against the immorality. Ultimately, they start seeing those people as the enemy, people that need to be taken out. I mean, this power is the power that the Chinese communists wield, that the Soviet communists wielded, that they wield in Burma, North Korea. That's now a core feature of the U.S. government. That's not what this country is supposed to be all about, Judge, as you well know.
I think a court will decide the president doesn't have the authority to kill somebody because of their words that they utter in another country.
Look at the controversies that were created during the Bush administration when the president got caught spying on American citizens without warrants or trying to detain them without due process. Here you're talking about something far more extreme. You're talking about targeting American citizens for murder, for assassination, based merely on the allegation that they're involved in terrorism. No evidence, no charges, no trial, nothing. And it's extraordinarily dangerous, especially when you consider the fact that when allegations of terrorism by the government are subjected to judicial review, in overwhelmingly high percentages of the cases, 72%, courts find that the allegations are without merit. So who would ever justify allowing the president to target American citizens for assassination without any judicial oversight or charges or due process of any kind?
The CIA has the authority to execute without charge, without trial, without jury, without judge, without appeal, American citizens that it considers dangerous simply because they're not located in the United States. Where do they claim to get this power from?
The president's battlefield powers extend everywhere, even to places where there is actually no combat whatsoever.
It's not just overseas, because notice that they've always claimed that the U.S. is part of this battlefield. That means implicitly that they're saying the CIA can now assassinate any American, not only overseas, but here, as long as they label him a suspected terrorist.
Well, that's probably what will come next.
Or potentially calling you or me a terrorist and trying to have us killed.
During the 8 years of the Bush administration, the battle was over torture. Whether they had the power to torture people that they labeled as terrorists with no trial. Now Obama's taking it one step further and saying, well, we don't need to deal with torturing people anymore. We just kill them. And as you point out, it extends to Americans now.
By undermining the linchpin for protecting basic human liberty, President Obama is proclaiming that the executive branch of the government of the United States of America has the explicit right and authority to murder American citizens. The extra-constitutional CIA, which has been constantly expanding its powers since World War II, has been more than happy to carry out the executive's illegal orders. The Constitution to the United States was written to restrict the power of the federal government and to assign to it very specific duties. And among those duties is the implicit direction that the purpose of the government is to secure and protect the rights to life, liberty, and property.
Based on 9/11, the government found the back door around those constitutional restrictions and saying, well, as long as we're at war, we can convert this crime, this criminal offense, terrorism, into an act of war at our option, and now we can do whatever we want. We're not constrained by the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We can take out anybody.
What they have to get back to is the basic rights and Constitution that say that political leaders in the United States cannot exercise power in an unchecked way.
My topic for this evening is now it's assassinations. What have we allowed ourselves to become? Are we no longer a nation of laws? Have we become instead a nation of men who make secret arrests? Are secret prisons now simply another tool of the federal government law enforcement? Is secret rendition of individuals now permitted out of misplaced fear? Have we decided that the writ of habeas corpus is not worth defending? Is torture now an acceptable tool for making us safe? Unfortunately, the single answer to all of these questions from the leaders of our country and to many of our citizens appears to be yes. And now we are told that assassination of foreigners as well as American citizens is legitimate and necessary to provide security for our people. It is my firm opinion that nothing could be further from the truth. Secret arrests, secret renditions, torture, and assassinations are illegal under both domestic and international law. These activities should be anathema to the citizens of a constitutional republic. The real threat doesn't arise from our failure to torture. Rather, desensitizing our nation to the willful neglect and sacrifice of our civil liberties fought and died for over the centuries is the threat. The concept of habeas corpus existed even before King John of England was forced in 1215 by his rebellious barons to sign the Magna Carta. This basic principle and expression of individual liberty, which has survived 800 years, greatly influenced the writing of our Constitution and our common law heritage. Today, we hardly hear a whimper, either from the American people or a stone-silent U.S. government as our cherished liberties are eradicated. Instead, we have a government that deliberately orchestrates needless fear and makes people insecure enough to ignore the reality of their lost liberties. The latest outrage is the current administration's acknowledgement that we now have a policy that permits assassination not only of foreign suspects, but of American citizens as well. Of course, the CIA has used secret assassinations in a limited fashion for decades, despite international, domestic, and moral law. When done secretly, as in the past, our government at least recognized that assassination was illegal and wrong. Frighteningly and astonishingly, however, the policy is now explicit. National Intelligence Director Dennis Blair, in open testimony before the House Intelligence Committee on February 3rd of this year, acknowledged that American citizens can indeed be assassinated at our government's discretion. The U.S. government attempted to assassinate Anwar al-Awlaki in Yemen without even charging him with a crime. We're told this evidence is secret, that he does not deserve any constitutional rights, and that some unknown individual in the administration has the authority to declare him a threat, and therefore a legitimate target for assassination. Yes, I know he's probably a very bad person. Yes, I know that only a few Americans are on the assassination hit list. Yes, I know that artificially generated fear makes a large number of Americans inclined to applaud this effort, which supposedly will make us safe. But if this could become standard operating procedure and a permanent precedent is established, let me assure you that this abuse of the law will spread. It's time for Congress and the American people to wake up to the realities of the dangers we face.
I have two words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
Yes, my dear people, even the police in the United States of America has been militarized to treat civilians as crimi terrorists. That's what they're calling them now, crimi terrorists. They're calling civilians crimi terrorists, and they have been trained by the Israelis. Again, all these assassination of people and these horrible tactics being used in the United States of America are training that came from the Israelis and teachings that came from the Israelis. And all this is preparing us for the end of the world. Yes, my dear people. So pay attention to this clip, which reveals such a thing.
Local police are getting their hands on weapons and equipment from the military. The 2011 Department of Defense forked over $500 million worth of military machinery to local police departments. So is the government gearing up for Main Street to rise up? From our New York studio, writing fellow for the National Institute, Max Blumenthal joins us now. Welcome, Max. So pepper spray, as we've seen, is the weapon of choice for police these days, based on the video coming out of these Occupy Wall Street protests. What else is law enforcement getting their hands on these days?
Well, first of all, I'm from the Nation Institute. I have to say that for my funders. But speaking of police funding, police have, as you said, just this year in 2011, received $500 million in surplus military weaponry from the Pentagon, which is authorized through the Pentagon's 1033 program. During the late 70s, Congress passed legislation called Posse Comitatus, barring the military from operating on American soil. And in the early 80s, there was an effort to circumvent that in Congress by arming police with military-grade weaponry. And now we're seeing that play out in the streets. People in the inner city in the U.S. have been experiencing this since the 80s, and now middle-class Americans in the Occupy movement are facing not only pepper spray, but things like the LRAD sound cannon, the long-range acoustic device, which can blast your cranium with 140 decibels, shaking your skull so hard even earplugs won't stop it. And as I reported for Al Akhbar English, this weapon has been tested on Palestinians in the occupied West Bank by the Israeli army. So civilians in the U.S. are now up against basically military-style policing.
So it sounds like you are calling this a militarization of the police force. Why is it happening, and what is behind it?
Well, it's been happening since the war on drugs, and what's behind it is a mentality among our police forces, our local police, that views common civilians, protesters, and common criminals, or as common criminals. And as I reported for Al Akhbar English in my piece, The Israelification of American Domestic Security, the former head of the Israeli Shin Bet intelligence services, Avi Dichter, who's accused of war crimes against the Palestinians, spoke beside FBI Director Robert Mueller at a police convention, at a convention before 11,000 top law enforcement officers. And after Mueller called Dichter his mentor in counterterrorism, Dichter urged American police to see to view their opponents, those they seek to arrest, as crimi-terrorists. In other words, to blur the line between common criminals and terrorists. So what we're seeing is not only a legal blurring of the lines between criminals, terrorists, and protesters, but something in the mindset of American policing and in their training, in which the civilian population is viewed as a hostile and menacing force that can be acted against with military-grade weaponry.
But why are we seeing this attempt to crack down on everyday civilians? Why are we seeing this overwhelming police response to peaceful protesters? Almost, I mean, you're calling it like this military reaction. It's almost as if we're in a war zone and they're responding to terrorist threats. Why treat civilians like they're terrorists?
There's definitely a fear among Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, has said that he feared that the Occupy movement would gain too much of a foothold and would continue to expand. And I was there at the raid on Zuccotti Park in downtown New York, and what I saw from the NYPD reminded me of demolitions I've witnessed by the Israeli army and the Israeli border police inside Israel and in the occupied West Bank. And as I reported, there's been, since 9/11, since the war on drugs transferred into the war on terror, 9,000 American police officers have been trained by Israeli security and intelligence officials. Hundreds of top law enforcement officers have gone to Israel to train, and what they're learning there is counter-terror training by a country that has spent 63 years dispossessing and controlling an indigenous population. Now they're bringing that back into the streets in the United States against the civilian population. So you're seeing a process since the War on Terror of Israelification. And this is extremely dangerous in terms of what it means for the relationship between civilians and their protection under established civil liberty codes.
Now, Max, who benefits from this militarization of the police force? I know Occupy Wall Street, they would say not the 99%.
Certainly not the 99%, certainly not the police, because police have to do community work. And what we've seen is a counter-terror creep in our local police forces through a program called JTTF, or the Joint Terrorism Task Force, where the FBI and even the CIA are able to come in and dictate to local police forces how they can treat, monitor, and spy on local populations. The NYPD, as I reported, and as the Associated Press reported, has set up what it calls a demographics unit. And this is following Police Commissioner Ray Kelly's several trips to Israel, where they've monitored virtually all areas of Muslim life in the United States. So clearly, they've gone beyond protecting civilians. It's not clear exactly who they're guarding, but with respect to the Occupy Wall Street, if you go down there, and if you went down there when the encampment was intact at Zuccotti Park, they were protecting the financial institutions at Wall Street. But at the same time, there's simply an effort by federal law enforcement to take the reins of local law enforcement, to corrupt local law enforcement, destroy the relationship between civilians and the police, and to treat civilians as criminals, if not terrorists, or as Avi Dichter, FBI Director Robert Mueller's so-called mentor, said, crimi-terrorists.
I want to ask you, because in some ways it doesn't really make sense. We've pointed out on RT before that these police officers, they're part of the 99%, so why are they engaging in these hostilities against their neighbors, their friends, their community?
You know, that goes to the mentality of just following orders. I've seen chants during Occupy Wall Street demonstrations at the police asking them to join the protesters, and that's simply impossible and disregards the position that police are put in. They're basically working people. So what this really goes to, and what I'm trying to show through my reporting, is the mentality of federal law enforcement leaders like FBI Director Robert Mueller and Ray Kelly, who has bragged that he has a weapon that can shoot down a combat jet, of militarizing their police forces and putting police officers who are working people, who are members of local communities, in impossible positions where they have to treat their neighbors as criminals and terrorists or crimi-terrorists. And this demographics unit that I mentioned that the NYPD has set up. And by the way, the NYPD refuses to disclose, the CIA refuses to disclose the name of the former CIA Middle East station chief who is in the senior ranks of the demographics unit. This is the level of coordination.
Finally, my dear people, if you want a copy of this program, all you have to do is to call us at 625-0446, 625-0446, and we would give you further information. And any one of you who wants to look at our programs and other DVDs that we have on the internet, all you have to do is to take down what you are seeing here now, these addresses for the internet, these web addresses. So just take this down, and this will bring you to different sites that we have that shows various programs that we have. And we have said all this to show you the lateness of time, that the end of the world is near. You need to prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. You need to have Jesus Christ as your Savior as you prepare for the end. So may God bless you that you take this warning. In Jesus' holy name, amen.